All right. All right. I would request all the panelists to please turn on their videos and audios.
Sure, Mani.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi. Hi.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start. So CAT 2021 result is already out, and most of the students who have applied to top B schools via CAT or any other entrance exam, at this moment, all of them must be wondering on how they can surpass the personal interviews and group discussion rounds. So to understand the kind of questions that will be asked there, get details on everything that students need to know before they appear for the interview, to get an insight around the kind of topics that students get in their GD rounds, to give some last minute prep strategies and a lot more. We have 3 student panelists with us today. Our first panelist is Farzan Sheikh, who has cleared both ISB Hyderabad and XLRI and will be taking admission to one of them this year. The second panelist is Daniel Sinha, who topped the IIFT entrance exam in 2020. And the third panelist is Harshita, who is an MBA batch topper at JIMS Rohini. So hi Farzan, Daniel and Harshita, welcome to this webinar. My name is Mani and I'll be the moderator for this session.
Yeah, hi Mani, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Mani.
Hi.
Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you so much, Mani.
So you're welcome. All of you have been successful in cracking the top MBA colleges. So let's make the most of this session by letting others know on how they can prepare for their GDPIs. So before we move ahead, I would like to request all the students who are here with us today to keep posting their questions in the Q&A section. We'll keep taking a lot of live questions as we go along. Let's begin and start with the personal interview experiences first. So Farzan, since you got admission most recently, why don't you start with your personal interview experience?
Right. So I appeared for 2 interviews, right? ISP and XLRI, and both were pretty different in the kind of interviews they take. So since ISB follows a more global approach of admissions and everything, it's a more profile-based college. So the interview was mostly based around my application form. So I had to submit two essays, right? And both the essays revolved around how I see myself as a future leader and how does ISP fit into it, my career after ISP, right? And the kind of work that I've been doing in the last 2 years post my undergrad, right? So the entire interview was based around that. And atypical of how Indian B schools conduct their interviews, it wasn't a grilling round. They weren't trying to, make me nervous or something. It was more on a discussion side. So they just wanted to understand me and my intention of doing an MBA, that for my ISP, right? Going to XLRI, since I went to that interview with a pretty high percentile, right? It was 99.94. So it felt more like a formality, I'll be very honest. But I mean, it started off very randomly, right? So there were a bunch of books behind me and it was a video call. So they started it with like, are you trying to show off that you read a lot? Right. And that's not the first question that you expect in an interview. So it started on a grilling note, but then I went in with a mindset ki na usko discussion ki tarah rakhna hai, and that's what I did. I made it look like a discussion, and they had a few questions. They asked me 10th and 11th standard physics, by the way. So very atypical of how ISB was conducted. Here I was being asked about things that I did long in the past, and also even XLRI had asked us to fill 2 forms. So the coursework that I had mentioned and the thing that I mentioned about my undergrad were like most of the questions revolved around that. So this was my experience.
Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, so so there are basically 2 things, and your interview experience kind of depends on your previous background also. Okay, so there might be 2 conditions. First, you are just a fresher out of college, or you are in the final year of the college, and second, you have work experience. So what has generally been observed is that if you have got a work experience, then your interview is more inclined towards your work experience part only, and they tend to ask questions about the things that you have generally done. Like in my case, I had a year of work experience. Still, my interviewers were more interested in knowing what I've been doing with the organization where I was working, and the kind of projects that I've taken up, and my personal contribution and my personal learning out of the experience that I've had in 1 year. Now, since I was experienced, so I'll just talk more about that. one question that would definitely be asked, or most probably be asked, is that why do you want to actually do MBA when you have already got a good job and you're already working, you're already learning so many things over there. So then you need to give them an idea of the fact that okay, I have already been involved in certain kind of activities when I was in college, and I would like to give this particular direction to my career. Gaining managerial skills, gaining the required aptitude to do well in the long run, and you need to align it with your short-term and long-term vision and goals as well. You basically need to convince them that you would be a proper fit in their in their entire B school setup, and this is the entire objective of the interview. They would like to know whether you would be able to take the grill and whether we are selecting the right candidate who is suitable for taking up admission in our courses. So it was around that, specifically to IIFT. I think since it is Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, so you would expect questions related to international business and things. Although it was not asked much to me, but there were many people who asked these questions, like questions related to foreign trade policies, questions related to international trade organizations, trade alliances. So these are the things that you should be well aware of and you should be comfortable with, so that you answer it. And rest of the things, I think general questions telling about yourself, why do you wish to do MBA, as I just mentioned. So these are the kind of things that are general. Specific to IIFT, I think yes, foreign trade, business, terms related to economics, current affairs is important in these interviews. They tend to ask questions from current affairs as well. So these are the basic things that aspirants must keep in mind. And rest of all, I think being confident is the key in all these processes, I think. Yeah.
Right. Right. All right. So, Harshita, moving on to you, how was your personal interview experience?
Okay, so my personal interview experience when I was appearing for JIMS Rohini, it was more again of a discussion round. They asked me why BTech, and then why did you, quit your job? Why did you want to do an MBA? So I have to be really candid, and you have to be very ardent that you really want to join the B school and you want to pursue an MBA, and this is your very much own decision, because when you start to earn, you start to learn. So it was more like she did ask me, we had a professor who was in psychology, and then we had a professor who was into finance, and a couple of other members were there. So they asked me questions related to my BTech background, then with my work experience, volunteering experience, and they asked me more why do I want to do MBA. So when you have had a work experience, so I had work experience of good 18 months working into a company like Zomato, which already has a really good brand name. So I told them that I really know the work to do, but I really do not know, coming from a BTech background, the logic behind it. And to go to a really good position wherein maybe I can run a business into a country, I really need to know what are the concepts, because experience is important and I have had enough. But to know the concept and then to be imparting that and imbibing that into your work is again a really wholesome, I'd say, experience altogether. So they weren't grilling me actually, but I did got grilled when I was again appearing for Deloitte. So I'll be joining Deloitte in upcoming months. So that was really wonderful. They do not want to grill you. They really want to know whether or not you're really aware of the contemporary issues. They'll ask you current affairs, about your academic background. Nothing will be out of your resume or the details you have filled out in your application form. So when you're speaking, when you're communicating, you have to be a really confident communicator. Whatever you're saying, you have to be very clear. Do not make the discussion topic go haywire, make it smooth. So that all tactics you really need to know. You have to prepare beforehand. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. So I am actually assuming, or maybe I'm sure about it, that most of you or all of you must have gone through online interview rounds, because we are in a pandemic situation at this moment. So can you tell us about a few preparation strategies or experience of your online interview? Were there any obstacles that you faced, or is there any issue that any of you faced, or any problem while greeting the panelists online, or any of that sort? Daniel, why don't you start this time?
So in case of IIFT, my interview was not online. I had gone there for, it had just started, so we were just fortunate enough to give an offline interview in that case. Other interviews, some of the interviews I had appeared for were online. And, yes, there's a little bit of difference, like, in your body language also it has to change, and you need to show the level of confidence in the online. Showing that in online setup is a bit difficult, differentiating between somebody who is more confident and somebody who is underconfident. I think it gets slightly difficult in online setup for them as well. In case of offline, it is clearly visible. So I think that is a challenge. So you need to, with your expressions and your articulation, you need to show them that yes, you have got that level of confidence and that level of awareness. Then again, as I said, frame of mind is extremely important, be it online setup or offline setup. There might be, there might be situations in which you might face technical difficulties as well. So in that case, you don't have to panic. I think that is also part of your process, how you respond to such situations. I think that is very important. There have been instances where there have been certain technical difficulties, glitches and all, but people have responded well to them and not panicked, have actually gone through. So that remains the key to success in such situations, I think.
All right. So Farzan and Harshita, anything that you guys would like to add about this?
Right. So I think
Any challenges or any experiences around online interviews?
Online interviews, right? I mean, so you need to have a checklist, right? I mean, one is before the interview, one is during the interview, and the first thing to, as Daniel said, right? I mean, you need to have backup internet. It's very important, right? If it disconnects in between, then you lose a lot of confidence. Secondly, you need to be in a well-lit area. You do not want to look shoddy, and please wear pants, because they might make you stand up, right? I mean, since it's online, a lot of people assume that it doesn't matter, but do wear pants. And during the interview, I think the first thing you need to do is, as soon as you join, at least join 5 minutes earlier than the time you've been allotted. And once they let you in, please start by asking them if you are visible and audible, right? Because doesn't, like, you'll start speaking and you realize and then all of a sudden it takes a big hit on your confidence. So these are a few things which I'll suggest. Apart from that, I think it's just like the normal PI, nothing different.
All right. So there were a few tips from your end. Harshita, anything you would like to add here?
I think broadly, before preparing for an interview, 3 things must be on place. One is all your hardwares, your software, and your psychology. So first thing is your Wi-Fi must be on place. Fazan and Daniel has already covered it for me. Thank you so much. And your system, you must have a backup system as well. I say rarely that this thing happens, very rare, because the person who's already ready to give the interview is, I think, scared and prepared enough. But still try to keep a backup system as well. Your softwares need to be compatible. It needs to be on point. Do a software check prior. And the third one is psychological, free your mind before anything. Free your mind, just, do a revision. And whenever an interviewer asks you something, just say thank you for your question first, because that generates, a very smooth, a very polite sort of movement or say momentum in the conversation which is about to happen. And be very groomed and clean. So when I appeared for my interview, if you are, say, lady, of course, please tie your hair back so that your entire face is clearly visible. Comb your hair properly. You're a gentleman, and then appear, because right now in the time of online interview, I think these all are the things that create your first impression, and that is really very important, because the question could be as simple as what is a cloud, and they could judge you on the basis of how you are behaving, your hand gestures, maybe your eye movements. Do not look into your phone when you're speaking. Do not look into the papers that you have. If you have, stick somewhere here and there. Do not look there. Just look into the camera. Make sure you still make an eye contact when you're online. So I think that above all is very important.
Okay. All right. So let's get a little deeper with you only. Would you like to throw some light on the kind of questions that were asked from you? Some different questions, some questions that you felt that were a little weird or anything like that?
So I have given a couple of interviews, and the questions that were really tough, I won't say tough, but I can throw some light on Deloitte interviews, and maybe even when I applied for GYMS, where they asked me that what have you done? I said, so it's bachelor's in technology. I'm a BTech graduate, and so they asked me what is a cloud. And I'm sure I had the answer ready, the technical answer ready. But by looking just at his face expression, I was pretty sure that, oh my God, he's not looking for some sort of technical answers. So I started giving him an example. And then he asked that, were you really think you were wrong somewhere while you were working or during your BTech? So you have to be really diplomatic about it, because as a student, we are wrong at, some points. So, or maybe wrong decisions. So you have to be really diplomatic about that, how you have mitigated that. Yes, I thought I was wrong here, but I learned from this experience, I mitigated. Do not say that, oh my God, I'm 10 on 10. That makes you look overconfident. Do not always behave that you're 10 on 10, because nobody is. And that will generate a good impression, because often interviewer, they ask you to rate yourself. So irrespective of the fact that I have my concepts clear about something, I do not rate myself more than 8 or 7.5. I never do that. And when they ask me ki, okay, your resume says otherwise and you're topper, and how can you say this on subject knowledge? So I scored 10 on 10 in operations, and he asked me, how would you think you are at operations? I said, so maybe I might be somewhere around 7.5. He asked me why. So are you saying that your faculty has not checked the paper right? Are you pointing a finger on the examiner, the invigilator? So I said, no, so it's not like that. It is because I'm a lifelong learner. So that is how you have to say, and that he was quite impressed by my answer. So that is how it goes. That is how it is. And there could be a couple of questions about your family background. Some students I have seen are quite skeptical about elaborating, throwing a light on their family background or something like that. So prepare beforehand. If they ask you about your family and about the relationships, how are you going to handle that questions? Because mostly we are prepared about the professional questions that are being asked, about your marks, about your subjects, about your business background. But the personal questions, little bit personal questions, I'd say nobody is prepared for that. So just be diplomatic. I'd say just be diplomatic.
You have to be diplomatic. That's the key. All right. So moving on to Farzan. Farzan, like you mentioned in the very first question, that the first thing that the examiner asked you in an interview was that there are a lot of books behind you, and are you trying to, showing off that you read a lot? So how did you answer it, and what are the other different questions, and were there any other grilling questions that you were asked?
Right. So I think like whenever such a question is asked, the key is to be honest. And those books belong to my brother, and he's an MBA student. So that's what I told them, right? Yeah, I wish I would have read so many books, would have been a lot more knowledgeable than I am. But they belong to my brother, and then they started asking more about my brother. So you go into an interview thinking about that you'll talk about yourself. Usually you expect the first question to
Right.
be tell me about yourself, but then here I was talking about my brother for the first 5 minutes. And then they asked me, do you think your parents are good at parenting? One is an engineer, the other is doctor, right? They must be good planners. So what have you learned in terms of management from them? So this was one question which threw me off, right? You don't go in plan with this. Then the
Right.
next question they asked was that you become an engineer, right? So 11th, 12th ka physics and maths must be strong. And I was like, hopefully, right? That's like, I hope it was strong.
Correct.
And they asked me what are the real world applications of quadratic equations, right? And that's what you learn for CAD as well. You learn quadratic equations for CAD. And so I had to think and tell him कि ठीक है ये applications हो सकते हैं. So I think these were some drilling questions. Apart from that, I had mentioned a course in entrepreneurship in my application form for XLRI. So again, they asked about business model canvas and what's missing in it. And I told them what's missing in it. And then they were like, do you think the person who made this was stupid? He missed it out. So, those kind of questions keep coming, right? I mean, you will say something and they'll just throw back something at you that you're not expecting. But I think the key here is to be calm and composed and answer honestly, whatever comes to your mind first. I think being candid does not hurt a lot until or unless you're saying something which is very offensive. And
Right.
with the ISB interview, I mean, there were a lot of hypothetical questions. If you are a manager, you have a team, this happens, that happens, what will you do? So again, I mean, all you have to do is be ethical, be balanced, and whatever comes to your mind, like turn it into a discussion, right? If you let it become an interrogation, that is the tone that will be set. So my suggestion is to, go in thinking about it as a discussion rather than an interrogation.
So I think the key takeaways that we or maybe the students can take from you is, it's not just about what you write in your resume or your essay. What's around you, what's surrounding you in your video call also matters a lot.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that's one of the major takeaways. All right. So moving on to Daniel. Daniel, were there any trick questions that were asked from you during your interview round? And if yes, how did you handle it?
not exactly trick questions, but they wanted to know my opinion on certain things. Like, I'll tell you how it started. So I had mentioned blogging in my interest in hobbies. Okay, so I write blogs. I write blogs on social and political issues. So at that time, just a few months back, Aam Aadmi Party had won the Delhi elections. Okay, so they kind of asked me, how do you think Delhi government is going to manage the expenses, given that it's providing all these things for free and all those kind of political discussions. So do you think that this is a good policy and what do you feel about it? They also asked me about, then the discussion went on to what do you think are the major sources of revenue of any state government? Also, what do you think are the major sources of revenue for Delhi government in specific? How do you think they are going to manage it? Do you think it is feasible? So you need to come across as somebody who has understanding, but who is not opinionated. Also, you need to come across as a neutral person who is accommodating and accommodates all the thoughts. Okay. Then they asked me about three major manufacturing industries in Delhi that are sources of revenue for the Delhi government. So you need to be aware of things. I think to answer these questions since I read about it and But the discussion, basically, what I mean to say, the discussion started with what I had written in my CV, that I'm interested in blogging, I'm interested in writing articles and posts and all. So I think what you write in the CV is important. You need to, most importantly, as Farhan and Rishita have also covered, I think you need to drive your interview where you actually need to take it to. Like, I was knowing about politics, so I had written that thing, and the discussion then went from there, and I was very comfortable in answering those questions. So I think you need to you can be responsible for what kind of questions would be asked. Of course, random things are also asked at times, but mostly it is you would be driving your interview forward. So I think that you need to have a sense. It comes with practice and experience, but yeah, that really helps in this processes. I think that is something that's important.
Right. So you can be the key driver for your own interview, the kind of interview that you must be going through in most of the cases.
To write in your CV is very important. I think the hobbies and interests that you write, right, they can pick anything from your CV and they can ask questions related to that. So that is the thing.
Right. All right. So moving on to a difficult question, which is, were there any questions that you didn't know the answer to, and if there were any, how did you handle that? I think I would like to know this from each one of you. Daniel, because we are talking to you, let's start with you.
Yeah. So
were there any questions that?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So there were a few questions about my computer engineering curriculum, which were not coming to my mind at that time. But again, that is also important, that how you respond in such situations when you don't know the answer to such questions. You can politely say that, sorry, it's not coming to my mind at this point of time, and you also need to tell them that I am going to go through it once I'm back, and so that they get to know that you have an urge to learn things also in case you don't know them. So I think it is fine to not know something, but how you respond to it and whether you panic or not is something that I really want to see in this. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Harshita, what do you think? Were there any questions that you were not able to answer, and how did you handle it?
So at times there are technical questions which you cannot answer. So Daniel has put it very right, that you can just say politely, I'm so sorry, sir, I don't have enough knowledge on this subject. I haven't even touched this subject right now, but I'll do this as soon as the interview ends, making it more that you're okay, you're far-sighted, you're going to read about it in future. Maybe you can say that I'm so sorry, sir, I don't know the answer. Be more polite. But there are times when there are certain controversial questions that are asked. I still remember in one interview I was asked that if given a lot of money and countries to travel to, what country, Harshita, will you choose to not travel? So that was a really controversial question. Okay, what country not to travel? And the amount of wisdom that I have gotten myself, I thought that I am not going to answer this question, because again, the next question will be, why do you not want to travel to this country? And correct, what is wrong about the people, about the government, about whatever is happening in this country? So I said, sir, with all due respect, there would be no such thing that I would not like to do or not like to travel. And even though back in our minds we do have one country which we do not want to travel, or maybe two, or maybe three, we do not right, want to travel, because maybe by the knowledge, by the media, by the television, or by the news, whatever we have gotten the information, okay, this is not a safe place to travel, I'm not going to travel here. So I said, sir, I would love to travel each and every country, provided you give me abundant amount of money. And no, there's no such country that I do not want to travel. And honestly, that saved me. That saved me because there were a couple of other students. Somebody said some country, somebody said some country. None of them were selected only because of this one question that made the final selection. So yes, there are certain controversial questions are present. I still remember somebody asked me in an interview how much open-minded you are, and then they went on grilling. I said, so I'm really open-minded. So if government makes this law, how fine are you? What is your take on triple talaq? What is this? So at that time you have to really think and answer. Take your time, take 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 1 minute, and then you answer, because make sure that such questions are usually the point turning questions, or maybe the selection or rejection questions. So these are the toughest question. However, in my academic journey and professional journey, the toughest question was this one only: which country you do not want to travel. So that is it.
We all have a country. We all have a country in mind where we would love to travel, but then we never think about where not to travel.
Exactly. All times we think, okay, I'm going to Greece, I'm going to Bali, I'm going to Maldives. I never thought, okay, there is a place, say supposedly there's a place, country, city, which I do not want to travel. And out of nowhere, that question comes to your face and you don't know whether to answer it, to push it back, to bounce it, or just save yourself. Just save yourself from that question.
Right. All right. So moving on to Farzan. Farzan, were there any questions that you were not able to answer? And if there were any, how did you handle it?
Right. So, I mean, usually when you're not able to answer a question, this will be a fact-based question, right? Technical or some current affair where, there's a particular one-word answer. And in such cases, there are two things you can do. If you're completely clueless, you can, as Daniel said, right, just let them know honestly. And the second thing you can do, in case you know how to reach that answer, like you have a thought process which can help you reach that answer, you can honestly tell them that you don't know the answer, but you can find it if they give you some time, and then you can walk them through your thought process. So, at least they can know that you have a logical way of like getting to the answer. So if you can do that, that'll be helpful. But mostly it always helps to be honest and to tell them that you'll learn it later on. So that is it.
I think showing them the willingness to learn is most important. I think that's it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that works. That works in most cases.
Right.
All right. So let's move on to a few typical questions that are part of most interviews, and let's see if you were asked any of them, all three of them. So were you asked why MBA? If yes, what was your answer? I would like a one-liner answer from each one of you on all the questions that I'll be asking next. Daniel, let's start with you. Were you asked why MBA and what was your answer?
And so I have already done, as I said, I have already done some of the things. Like I gave an example that I was the coordinator of the business and management club in my undergraduate. I wish to take up that as a full-time profession, and I would like to gain those skills. And also peer-to-peer learning is something that is very important in B-School interviews. That is something that is typically mentioned. So that also I mentioned in my interviews typically, that these are things I would like to gain out of it majorly.
Okay. Harshita, were you asked why MBA and what was your answer?
Yes. So one, if I as you said, you want a one-liner answer, so I just put it straight that I really want to know why I'm doing certain things in an organization, whatever I'm doing in an organization. So this has been my answer back in 2019, 2020, 2021, and even in 2022. So this is the common answer. And this was the main reason why I went for MBA at the first place. Because while I was working, I was really confused. While working in Zomato, I was handling ad sales as well and all that, fancy parts of it. So I was understanding the technical parts, but I wasn't understanding, okay, so we have P&L calculation coming from, BTech, and that too, I'm a chemical engineer. I don't understand. I understand benzene rings. I don't understand, okay, how to calculate P&L of a city. And there are certain decisions that were made by upper management. To some I agreed, to some I did not agree. I really wanted to know that what was the psychology, the science, and the reason, the finances behind it. So that all of that I have gained from my MBA. So it is as simple as that, dear. So I really want to know why I'm doing whatever I'm doing in an organization.
All right. Farzan, were you asked why MBA and what was your answer?
I was made to write a 500-word essay on it as part of the application process. So they briefly touched it, and a one-line answer would be that I was working in consulting. So, this answer of why MBA will change from person to person. There's no correct answer to it.
Okay.
I was already working in consulting when I was in the interview, and whoever has worked in consulting knows that it's you need an MBA for an entry, like to all these bigger firms, all these global firms, and to grow in it, everyone has an MBA, right? I mean, it's more like a compulsion thing now. So that was my pretty straightforward answer, that I'm a generalist. So I told them who I am. I'm a generalist. I love doing consulting, and I want to do it at a bigger level now, right? And to grow and to fast track my career, MBA made sense. So that was my answer.
Okay. So our audience has 3 answers to this most typical question that is being asked in an interview. The second question is, were you asked why our college and what was your answer? Farzan, we'll start with you this time.
Right. So XLRI did not ask. ISB again made me write a 500-word essay on it, and the answer is for me. I mean, you will have giving a general answer for everyone here, that you have to do a lot of research on the college, the alumni base, right, the curriculum, and the kind of career opportunities the college provides. Now, ISB is also known as the consulting mecca of India, right? Almost every global consulting firm visits ISB, and so for me it became a very straightforward answer. I'm a generalist, want to work in consulting, right? All the consulting companies are coming to ISB. The peer group is pretty diverse, right? A lot to learn from them, right? The curriculum is global, and hence I would want to go to ISB. So as simple as that. I had also done a few research on the kind of clubs the college has, right? The kind of students that come to it. So you can use all of those things to support your points. There's a particular club, consulting club, which has been doing great in this area. So, all of these, you just need to show them that you have done your prior research, and it's not just a random thing, right? Mauka milta hai to le lo type of college. So,
right.
So that's a key point from why this college.
All right. Daniel, were you asked why our college and what was your answer?
Yeah, I think Farzan has put most of the points very well. You need to show them that you are actually interested in joining the college and you have done your bit of research for that. Try to know more, like in case of IIFT, try to know more about so IIFT is particularly good for all the sectors and industries, particularly it is for trade. So you basically need to show them that you would like to explore more of that, and you would like to get in-depth exposure to that and get in-depth knowledge of that particular field, like the specialization of the college in which you're actually appearing for the interview. And apart from that, as you mentioned, strong alumni base, strong industrial exposure, the kind of activities and the facilities that you would actually get. I think these are the important things that if you mention to them, they would be knowing that, yeah, this person has researched about our college and is genuinely interested in joining, and just not for the sake of just sitting in the interviews there. So that's how it goes, I think. So there are certain, the point is there are certain specialities for any institute. So you need to look at that and frame your answer accordingly for this.
All right. Harshita, what about you? Were you asked why our college and what was your answer?
So I think Daniel and Farzan has covered it really, in the most appropriate way possible, that you have to do thorough research about the college, about the alumni, about even the faculty. Like I did even read and did my, LinkedIn search on the faculty as well. Okay, I want to take this specialization in this faculty is very nice, and you have a really strong faculty base, and that's it. Just your basic research about the college and whether or not you really want to join some club, you want to achieve some milestone in the club, or you have set something in your mind, so that will work. I think I was not asked this question exactly, but yes, when I joined, so during the classes and everything, couple of faculties asked me, why did you join this college, and why did you not went for IIM or something? So I told them, so I was already into, I was already working, and I worked like some 8 to 9 hours a day. I could not find time to prepare, and I was really honest with them, whatever happened, but I'm pretty sure that I'll perform well here. I have given other exams as well. I have other, MATS scores as well. So I really thought that this was fine, because when you're working and when you're working with a company, and that too, the company has other projects, the projects are in baby care phase. So, you really do not get time to prepare. And I said, so I really did not wanted to take a gap. So that was my very honest answer to the, faculties when they asked me the question. And I think, but that again, that went for me. But for the general public, for the general graduates, I think what Daniel and Fazan has put on was most appropriate. And exactly, you have to do your basic research. You need to know the interviewer. You really need to know who's interviewing you. So it's a common research process. He does that research on your he stalks your CV, and you stalk their profile, you stalk the the college, the profile, the alumni, the companies that are visiting, etc.
All right. Moving on to the third and the most typical question that is asked in most interviews, it's were you asked where do you see yourself in 5 years? Harshita, let's start with you.
Yes.
And if you were asked this question, what was your answer?
Yes, I was asked this question like 2 times. Where do I see myself in 5 years? And this is really a difficult question to answer. But I'm also a Netflix geek. So I watch a lot of movies, a lot of biographies, autobiographies, rom-com on Netflix. So I told them it's not about, it's a typical question to answer because life throws curves at you. And when it comes flying by, you don't know when to dodge it, what happens. So I told them a very general answer, which I saw in the movie. It's not about what I want to be in 5 years. It's about who I want to be in 5 years. And in 5 years, I really want to be a confident person. I want to be my faculty's pride, my parents, shining star. So I gave them a really answer that goes by myself. And when I ended it, I told them, okay, if you have seen this movie, this is from this movie. And it really got me touched, and it drives me and my passion. So I told them, yeah, it's never about what I want. It has never been about what I want to be in 5 years. And nobody can. I mean, nobody really saw pandemic coming. Back in 2015, when I was when I entered into my BTech life, I did not thought, okay, for 2 years I'll be doing work from home. Okay, this is going to hit me really bad. Okay, I'm going to be hospitalized in 2020. Okay, I'm going to barely survive. So that all things, you really cannot predict things. It's really, as the word says, unprecedented, unpredictable. So I said it's about who I want to be in 5 years. I do have a LinkedIn post on what do you want to be in 5 years. It got published in my college, magazine as well, newsletter as well. So I had I still have this answer. I got it prepared. I might be not knowing, tell me about yourself, but I know what do I want to be in 5 years.
All right. Okay. Moving on to Daniel. Daniel, were you asked this question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If yes, what was your answer?
Yeah, so I was asked this question, and this can be particularly answered in 2 ways. First, in terms of the career growth that you would like to, and second, in terms of the skills that you would like to acquire over the next skill set that you would like to gain over the next 5 years or any period of time for that matter. So in case you are, if you have an idea of the kind of industries that you would like to see yourself working in, like if for example somebody is interested in sales and marketing, Fazan knows that he is supposed to go into consulting, so he can talk about that I wish to take this up, and 5 years down the line I like, right, it would be good if he mentions the role and position also, then they would be very impressed with that. Secondly, as I mentioned about the kind of skills that you would like to gain, I would like to become a more confident individual. I would like to acquire these particular skills. I would like to refine my communication skills, become a more presentable individual for that matter, enhance my organizational skills. I think this is something that many people answer in such interviews. So these are the kind of things that, so again, as I said, introspection and looking properly into going properly through your profile and carefully analyzing what your target career goals are is very important. And then you can answer those questions according to the skill sets that you would like to gain, apart from the career aspects of things that I just discussed.
All right. Farzan, what about you? Were you asked where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what was your answer?
I was asked this only once, and as Harshita said, right, things change a lot in 5 years. So my interviewer only said this. Yeah, I know things change a lot in 5 years, and you won't know it right now. Right. But even then, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think my answer was again a mix of career and skills. And since I have this clarity where I want to work and what I want to do, so it was very logical and easy for me. Right? It was not as interesting sounding as Harshita's, but at least it like after my answer, they did not have a lot of follow-up questions on it. So it sort of calmed them down. Okay, he knows what he wants to do. So basically, I just told them that I want to be managing and mentoring teams, as a consultant. And I hope in the next 5 years, I would have worked with multiple companies out of multiple geographies in multiple industries, right? That kind of an exposure. So that's all I said. And it worked. It worked for me.
I think like it primarily depends on where you are in an interview. Like if your interview has, just begun, it's been just 1 or 2 minutes, answering it in a psychological way would be, too much for the interviewer. It would be really too much. But if you have reached up to that level wherein you have developed the rapport with the interviewer and he has started to talk about, life and something like that, then you can say, so honestly, I would have said that right now, like say if I take my example here, that's I'll be joining as an advisor in Deloitte in your next month. So of course, after 5 years, I see myself as senior consultant, or maybe I see myself in, actually I work for the, US, I'm USI. So I might be actually sitting in USI, maybe into Luxembourg, Pennsylvania, or maybe any other office. So that would sound really okay. She has done the research. She knows that it actually takes 5 years to reach into that position. Right. So into, 15 minutes into that interview. But if I straight, hi, what's your name? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, sir? I see Netflix. And so that will be a really bad answer, like worst answer. Do not follow whatever I said. If you have just entered into the interview, that will backfire. That will of course backfire, because I do my research. I know, because I think I understand psychology enough to get where I have put myself into an interview. And one thing that really good faculty told me, and she told me, Harshita, always know 2 things in life. One, that the interviewer has 15 minutes. In that 15 minutes, either he can grill you for 15 minutes, or you can choose to speak for 10 minutes and give him 5 minutes just to think and make sure that you make the conversation so interesting. And you, my dear, have an entire day for that interview. So when you're answering that question, make sure you're so interesting and the interviewer is so much vested in your answer that he does not check the time. He checks when the stopwatch, his stopwatch makes a pause. Okay, for 15 minutes, he did not need to get the, the zest of the time. So he has 15 minutes, you have an entire day. Now it's up to you how you're going to take that answer. You can answer it in 1 minute. So I see myself as a senior consultant, or maybe you can, make a really beautiful 1 paragraph answer of it. He's there just to listen to you. That 15 minutes are just for you, my dear, whosoever is appearing for a college, for say a company. That is up to you how you want to take that interview.
All right. So for all the students who are a part of this webinar at the moment, I think we have leaked 3 most important questions for you here, and you got to hear 3 different answers for all the 3 different questions that we asked. And you can either build your own answers around these questions, or you can maybe, take a cue from our panelists and go ahead and give such answers in your personal interview rounds. So moving on to discussing the kind of topics that are being asked in the group discussion rounds. So would you like to tell us something about the questions or the topics that are given in different GD rounds for different colleges? And do all colleges conduct this group discussion round, or is it a part of certain colleges? Yeah. Let's start with Daniel. Daniel, let's start with you this time.
Group discussion I had in couple of the processes. First, I think was IIM Shillong. It was a case-based discussion, I guess, in Shillong, and in IIFT it was a proper group discussion. But in the online setup, I think it has been scrapped, because obviously such huge groups handling group discussions is not possible. But you never know; students should be prepared for all kind of situations. So I'll just tell you briefly about my GD experience. My topic was what according to you is more important, being important or being famous. I think this was the topic that I was given. Again, abstract topic, you need to put in your opinions. So what typically happens in IIFT is that you get, first of all the people get 1 minute to speak, and then the stage is everybody gets 1 minute to speak, and then it's kind of a discussion kind of thing in which you can interject and speak. That's the kind of thing. So you need to present your maximum in that particular 1 minute that you get initially. Okay, since the groups are very large, So you need to find that space. You might not get that space to speak later on. So you need to put in all your points in that particular 1 minute only. Again, I think articulation is important. You need to look at both the aspects of the things, and you need to give examples. I think something that I did in my group discussion was that I mentioned examples of both the kinds and tried to convince the people about what I was actually trying to say. I gave some recent examples also. As I said, knowledge of current affairs is important in all the three aspects, be it GD, VAT, or PI. So that really helped me in group discussion. You can drive something related to current affairs to your to support your point, and you can gain brownie points out of that. Starting or I think that is something people who start or speak towards the initial part of GDs get more weightage. It is generally understood. There's one person who concludes the GD also. He will also get certain brownie points. So these two things have to be kept in mind. Otherwise, it is pretty good. One thing, try not to make it into a fish market. I think that is something that, again, basic GD etiquettes, let other people also speak. I think other people will also cover it. There are something that I, try to keep in mind and help me out in the GDs.
Okay. Farzan, what was your GD topic if you went through a GD round?
So I did not go through a single GD round. So it was all online. So colleges had scrapped it. But I think Daniel covered everything in great detail.
Okay. Harshita, anything from your end?
I did not had any GD round, and I think these days, as far as I know, because my younger sibling and cousins are appearing for certain colleges, so what they're doing is they give you a topic, and they are very smart. They know that this is going to be a really fish market, so they ask opinion individually. They give everybody chance, they put everyone on mute, and they ask everybody to speak one-on-one. So for that, even my college did prepare me for that situation. So they gave me a very idealistic skeleton of how to appear for a GD if this happens, which is happening for most of the colleges, as I've gotten to know that when you begin, you give your good afternoon, good evenings, and then you say, today I'm going to speak on topic, and then you may paraphrase the topic. You don't have to exactly copy paste it. You just paraphrase it, and then you give one or two example with your own life, or maybe you can just if you have read it somewhere or something, but examples are mandatory. You're learning from that particular situation. You have to conclude and say one or two lines. And one thing that I was very much clearly told was always use the word I believe. Whenever you're saying, okay, so you say one topic that I remember was red. So it's an abstract topic. So say, I believe that red is a really, color of danger, color of love, color of whatever you want to say. So use the word I believe. Whatever you're saying might not be, might differ for everybody. So say, I believe whenever you're saying. And one more thing, that if anybody is not speaking in a GD, and if you're lucky enough that you have gotten a chance wherein everybody can unmute themselves and speak. So if you find somebody who is not able to speak, just, push them up to speak. Yeah, I believe that Money is not speaking. Would you like, what's your take on this? How would like to, so that makes you a team player. And I think the main reason why GD is conducted is, apart from, they judge your communication attitude, they also judge how better team player and leader are you. So only a leader has a chance, who can skip everything and make anybody else, speak in the place of, their chance, or maybe at the place. So I think you have to be really empathetic, be nice in GD. That's it.
Right. All right. So when we shared this webinar invite with the students, there were a lot of questions that we received via the Google form that was shared along with the webinar invite. So I'll keep dropping one question to each one of you, and I think you can give an answer to, so that we can cover as many questions as we can, since we are very short on time now. So the first question that we received from that form is, do you think having backlogs matter during GDPI? Farzan, why don't you take it?
Right. So I think any shortcoming in a profile, as long as you have a proper explanation for it, as long as you can show that you've improved, that you have had some learning through those experiences, right? So I think that should solve the purpose, right? That is what they're focused on, that that you made mistakes, but have you learned from it? So that is the key here.
Right. All right. Daniel, the next question is for you. The question is, should I be very specific about the specialization I want or not?
it is good to have that amount of information research beforehand. But even if you're not aware of it, it is fine. I think they would like to know more about you as a person and not exactly the specialization. There are certain B schools where you have to apply to the specific, like I think SPJAN has got that thing that you need to apply to a specific courses. Yeah. So in that case, of course, you need to know. Otherwise, I think it is fine even if you don't know it. I did not encounter such issues in any of the interviews.
All right. Okay. Then I can see a few questions around what should one do if we don't know an answer. I think all three of the panelists have already covered this question in detail. So I would like to request the students who have missed that part, the recorded video of this webinar will be available on the official YouTube channel of shiksha.com. If you have missed on this question, you can visit the YouTube channel and watch that section again. The next question is how to introduce ourselves as a fresher. Harshita, why don't you take this up?
Okay, so when you're introducing yourself, make sure that if you're saying is as a fresher, so the last I remember I was fresher in I think 2019. It's been 19, 20, 21, 4 years. So when you're introducing yourself as a fresher, back in time when I did it, it was like, hello sir, good afternoon, good evening, I am this, my graduation is this, and just tell about yourself, that how much curricular activities, about your academic qualifications. Do include your academic qualifications, your curricular activities, your co-curriculars, extracurriculars, your hobbies, your interests, and if there is certain quote or say certain saying in life that you go by, so do include that.
Okay.
So when I was a fresher, usually my intro began with hello. After my salutations and everything, I believe that we all have two lives, and the second one begins when we realize that we have only one. So using this, I think I'm usually, what Fazan said, a generalist. So I used to call myself a generalist back when I did my BTech. So I'm really interested into everything, and even I see my future as a consultant, which I have already explained while I was saying about my joining and other stuff. So just make sure that whatever you have done during your +2, your graduation, because you're a fresher, and all the activities, all the clubs you're part of, all the initiatives you have taken, above all the initiatives you have taken, you have conducted, any sort of say webinar, or you were part of cultural societies, or maybe your hobbies, interest, just make sure you're saying something that you can justify. So that's it. I think that as a fresher would go.
All right. So we have a live question that is coming from Vasudha S. She's asking how many months of current affairs should we revise, and should we know all the events of 2021? Farzan, why don't you take this?
Right. So, I mean, in terms of, so there are two things, right? They'll ask two kinds of current affairs. One, which is related to your profile. There are things that you must know if you have shown interest in certain areas, right? If I tell them I'm interested in cars, so I should know that Tata Motors is doing great, or, things related to that. So that is one kind of current affairs that you should be aware of. So around your profile. Second is in a very general way, things that are important, right? And I think there is no fixed timeline for it, but since interviews will happen in April, May, so knowing what happened, like the major event of 2021 should at least be on your fingertips, right? The agriculture laws and all those things, right? Politics and stuff like that. But again, as Daniel said, you are the one leading the interview. So more or less,
Right.
whenever you show an interest in some areas or the other, that is where the current affair questions are asked. That is what I've noticed so far. But again, it can be very random. I mean, you cannot predict what happens there.
All right. There's another question from an anonymous attendee, and the person is asking how to justify gap years in PI. So, Harshita, you can take this question.
So if your gap years are after, 10+2 for preparation, or maybe the people who have appeared for IITs and, NEET, UG or something like that, you can, just be honest. Just be honest, just say that, so I prepared for this college, or I prepared for this examination. You can just be honest. That is it. Because, often I think one thing we must not do is underestimate the person who is interviewing us. He might be the first interviewer for us, but he has taken thousands of other interviews. He is very much aware that, okay, if you've taken physics, you might have done, a preparation for IIT or something like that. But yes, if in case you have done other courses in that gap year too, you can highlight those first. That, okay, sir, I did that.
Right.
And if you have had gap year after your graduation, maybe for preparing for CAT or other examinations, you can simply say that, sir, be honest again that I took my gap year because I was preparing for this exam. And if in case we have other certifications and you have done certain courses from maybe Coursera, Udemy or something like that, just make sure that you highlight that. It always adds value to that.
All right. Let's take the last question for today. And the question is, Daniel, you can take this question. The question is, can I use Hindi language mixed with English? And if not, what can I do to improve my English?
This is a trick question, I think. I don't know. I haven't encountered such situations. I think you should stick to English since it is. You can use Hindi in between if you're very it's really not comfortable. But I think it is preferable to use English language since the mode of communication is generally English, even once you enter the B schools also. So I think it is this reason why they actually have all this. Even if you look at the entrance examinations, I think English forms an important component. So there's a reason for that. But improving English, I think that is something which you can of course do. You try to read a lot, try to do speaking practice also in case you're not comfortable, try to do a lot of mock interviews before you go into the actual interview, mock GDs also in case there's a possibility. There are coaching institutes that do it. You can take the help of your friends and all, but basically you need to achieve that level of proficiency. I think it not only helps you in B school entrance processes, but in the long run in your corporate journey as well. I think that's important. See, it's not just about the language that you know. I think it is important to be articulate and be communicative. But I think yes, English also definitely plays a role. So I would not really recommend somebody using Hindi too much. I think it's not advisable as far as I'm concerned.
Right. All right then. Anup, you can now share the survey link. I would request all the students to fill in this quick survey that will appear on your screen so that we can improve in our upcoming webinars. I can see a question in the live Q&A chat that which YouTube channel do we have? It's via the name shiksha.com. You can watch all the recorded webinars there on the official YouTube channel of shiksha.com. So now that our panelists have tried to provide you as much expertise and tips possible, there's a small tip that even I would like to give, and that is to stay calm and honest during the interview. I think most of the panelists, all three of them, have covered this tip, but I would like to give a little more focus to it, that staying calm is the key. Remember that a calm face that can honestly communicate that they don't know an answer is always better than a nervous one. So here I would like to request all the students who are part of this webinar as audience to feel free and share your future interview and group discussion experiences with us by tagging us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And a few of you might join us next year in another webinar for GDPI tips. We have tried to answer as many questions as we can. If your queries still remain unanswered, I would request the students to visit the Ask and Answer section of Shiksha and post your queries there. We'll try to send them to our panelists and resolve them as quickly as possible. Also, if I've not mentioned before, we are very active on our social media handles, such as Instagram and Twitter, so you can follow us there to know about the upcoming webinars. With this, I would like to wish all the very best to all the students who were present today here. I hope this webinar will help you in preparing better for your group discussions and personal interviews. A special thanks to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you so much, Farzan, Daniel, and Harshita. It was indeed a great session with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mani, for having us.
Thank you, Mani. You have been an amazing moderator.
And all the best to all the aspirants as well. Wish you all the best in all your endeavors. And thank you to the fellow panelists also. It was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.